Welcome everyone again. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. It's great to have you here. Today we're going to be discussing the rebirth of talent communities. I'm from LiveHire, based over in Sydney. I will be just doing the introductions today. So I'd like to introduce Michaela, who is the Marketing Director at Proactive Talent. Over to you, Michaela.
Welcome everyone. Yes, my name is Michaela Berman and I'm the Marketing Director here at Proactive Talent. And at Proactive Talent, we're a recruiting and employer brand consulting firm, and we're really excited to be here with LiveHire today. And with that, I would like to introduce our first guest, Will Staney, who's the CEO and founder of Proactive Talent.
Awesome. Thanks, Michaela. Hey, everybody. I'm Will Staney. I just want to first thank the LiveHire team for doing this. Many of you folks are up at 3 a.m. right now helping make this webinar happen, and I really, really appreciate you've been an awesome partner on this webinar. For those that don't know, actually, Proactive Talent, we are a client of LiveHire. We use their ATS and talent community CRM for our own hiring here of a lot of freelance practitioners, and then LiveHire is actually a client of ours. So as they're expanding in the US, we're helping them hire amazing sales professionals that are as passionate about the platform as we are. So a little bit of background on me. I started Proactive Talent about 4 years ago after about a decade in talent acquisition leadership. I built the recruiting programs and global employer brands at companies like VMware, SAP, Glassdoor, and Twilio before starting Proactive Talent. And as Michaela said, Proactive Talent, we are a employer brand and talent acquisition strategy firm. We also do on-demand recruiting, sourcing sprints. We're pretty much everything partner for talent acquisition functions, helping to augment and build your strategy and modernize for today. So really happy to be here. And with that, I will be introducing my co-presenter, the CEO of LiveHire, Christy Forest. Christy, good to see you.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate that. It's great to work with you guys, and want to thank everyone who's joined us today for this webinar. It's a really fun topic and discussion. I'm looking forward to getting into it, and I think there's been a lot of evolution, so it'll be really interesting to dig in. Before we do that, I'm Christy Forest. I'm the CEO of LiveHire. My accent is American, as you can hear. The company is founded and headquartered in Australia. Lots of awesome technology coming out of Australia. And in my tour of duty with CEB, Corporate Executive Board, I worked for them for about 20 years. Half that time was in the US and half in Asia Pacific, launching our operations there. And that's when I found LiveHire. And in fact, if many of you know Corporate Executive Board, CEB, the best practice research firm that actually does quite a lot of work with HR professionals, all C-level executives actually, but best practice research. We wrote a study on the future of talent acquisition, and there was this awesome company right in Australia who had basically created the future with their technology. So followed my passion, followed the founders and the team there, and really, really thrilled to be working with LiveHire on its growth strategy and taking us into America, and obviously very grounded in Australia already. Thanks again to Proactive for the partnership.
Thank you, Christy. We're just gonna go through the agenda, which is we're gonna be starting with talking about kind of the why are talent communities back on the agenda? What is supporting their rebirth? What happened in the past and how have they changed? And then how to sustain a talent community for the long term. And then really key steps at launching talent communities for your organizations. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to type them in to your question box, and we're going to reserve all questions at the end for about 15 minutes and have a Q&A. So the first question is, what is the talent community and what are its origins in talent acquisition? Will, would you please start?
Sure. Yeah, I'll even start a little bit before that. I mean, before the concept of talent communities came up, I mean, you really, as a job seeker, you had two options when you were interested in an organization, interested in a job, right? You can go to the career site and apply, or you could leave to never be seen or heard of again. And that was really it, right? If you knew somebody at the organization, maybe you could get in that way, but really those were your options. And then something happened around 10, maybe a little more years ago, really when I was getting into the organization and was at VMware, was you were starting to see talent community technologies like Findly and JobsWeb become pretty common, at least in the major enterprise players. And essentially what this allowed you to do was give people another option to express interest, to raise their hand about opportunities. If maybe they didn't see a role right away, or maybe they didn't really kind of figure out or know what kind of role they were looking for, they could simply join by giving you a little bit of information, a talent community or talent network, if you call it, or talent pool. And they could hear about opportunities and learn more about your company.
Yeah, I think, Will, it's interesting to think about, how the idea was conceived and what the original version was, if you will, really probably more like a database. And I think nowadays our view is that if the database is being used to spam candidates, that's probably not what anyone really intended. And it's unfortunate, because I think the intention was right and the idea was right, and we really believe and we feel that a community should have a feeling of connectedness, should have more personalization, a bit more mutuality, and almost by definition it should be two-way. And so I think what happened was community as a word got attached to something that was actually quite one way, and it wasn't very personalized, and it was in a way it became a spam machine. And so if you go to the next slide, I think, again, as we've said, it's really about having a two-way dialogue and feeling a sense of connectedness to the company that you want to authentically understand a bit more about, and maybe in a low-risk way, learn about over time and have them see you for your full potential. And that's really how we would think about community. And I think that's really possible today when you think about the convergence of cloud, mobile, social. We all have phenomenal experiences as consumers. We know it's possible. If you go to the next slide, I think what has also happened, and there's some really good quotes within the industry that support our view on this, which is that the traditional ATSs were really built from a requisition forward standpoint. Everything revolved around the job rec. Everything was sort of company out, as opposed to revolving a process around the candidate. What's the candidate experience? What's the kind of experience they want to have? And Matt Charney has a great quote on this that basically says you can't really reverse engineer from an ATS to a system of engagement, or from a system of record, if you will, to a system of engagement. You actually have to start with the system of engagement and work your way forward, and you can build in system of record at that point. But I think that's really where the struggle is that, when we were so grounded in the traditional approach and it all started with the job rec, the version of community that got created was sort of dysfunctional.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a community at all, right? I remember when I was launching talent communities in the past as an employer brand leader, they were essentially email marketing systems, and we were still treating them as rec-based process, right? We were just sending job alerts, essentially, right? And they weren't even very accurate either, right? Because we were only going by maybe name, email, and then maybe like some high-level categories of jobs that they would, pick. So it just it really wasn't what I would consider a community. Yeah.
So based on what you were saying, have talent communities historically been successful? Will?
Yeah, I mean, I would say they've fallen short of what the golden promise of them would be about 10 years ago when they really became popular. Really just in the fact that it's kind of multi-pronged. One, the technology wasn't totally there. I mean, the function of a talent community is really a feature, not a full suite of everything you need to engage candidates into and through a hiring process. And then you started having ATSs build this as a little feature, a CRM started to build this feature where you're still cobbling all these systems together and hoping that they talk and integrate. To really do that well, I mean, you need a talent community, one that is two-way, and that is fully integrated in a CRM or an ATS, so that when so that you're able to sort of segment those audiences within your talent community to make sure that you are messaging to them appropriately. The idea is that you don't need to email them a new job alert every week, because surely you're not hiring on your sales department every single week, or surely if they wanted to apply to that job by then, they would have, right? You really got to take advantage. And I think the biggest gap that companies have had in making talent community successful is that they haven't, one, built the skill set internally within their team, to have employer brand leaders, to have recruitment marketers that know how to segment and market the experience of working at your company, and not just spam more jobs, right? If people want to find jobs, they know where to find your jobs. They're already in your talent community, so likely they've been to your career site, right? What they want to do, I think, when people join a talent community is they want to establish a relationship. They want to learn more about working at your company, and to be contacted at the right time when you either have something of value to share with them or a job opportunity you are interested in. And the other thing is the amount of job postings are going up, and the amount of applications coming in are going up. And when you focus on sort of that traditional post and pray strategy of hiring, rather than building a long-term, engaged, warm pool of the talent with the skill sets that you want, and you do the post and pray, that gets more and more expensive and creates a lot of inefficiencies in your hiring process, where you're having to weed through a lot of candidates that aren't very good matches. And then when you're treating your talent community as another job alert system, you're making that problem even worse, because you're sending candidates who aren't relative to those job alerts, and they're applying into jobs they're not qualified for because they're fans of your company and want to get in, and you're bogging down your recruiters more time. So creating talent community is something that it takes time to build it organically and nourish and build it. But once you're doing it the right way over time, it creates all kinds of efficiencies that I know Christy has data to back up what I just said.
Yeah, I really do. And I think your point is a good one. There's maybe three things going on. One is, there is a flood of work to do around the number of job postings and applicants, and everything has sort of escalated. And if we're stuck in a start from the wreck and go from there process, it's going to feel quite overwhelming. And then to your point, there's probably skill issues and our own ability to sort of think about how we can shift our not only our time but our capabilities to engage with the community. But I also think that the technology of the past actually hasn't done us any favors, and so it's sort of shackled us to this kind of practice, which is quite reactive. And so again, this inability to reverse engineer and what it's created, and I think the risk to organizations around this experience that's being created in mass for the number of candidates that are out there, is the data would tell us that 60% of the job seekers have a bad experience. They actually have a really poor experience. Most of that is because it's through a job application process, maybe a very, very limited information in a CRM that then pings them something that's totally unrelated to them or at the wrong time. 86% of those candidates won't remain a customer. This is really powerful and important, and increasingly what we're seeing is that customers really realize the impact that talent acquisition has on their corporate brand. So the reach and the impact, it's both a risk and an opportunity in terms of the number of candidates who are also customers that get touched through this process, and the power of transforming that experience to have a real material impact on the business at large. And finally, 80% of those candidates wouldn't even reapply. So no wonder we all feel this need to constantly go out and grab more and more quantities of candidates. at LiveHire, we really believe that actually it can be quality over quantity if we're making the most of what we have, and if we have an authentic connection that's tech enabled. And so it's not an increased burden. Actually, there are some wonderful ways that you can capture moments that matter through technology at scale, but feels personal. Two-way text messaging, the way the world works today, very, very important to the formula that we've been able to find.
Yeah, I think you made a really great point on candidate experience, right? How great of a candidate experience is it if, one, your application process is sort of lengthy and difficult, or they're uploading a resume and then having to type that same resume in front of it, right? We've seen those enterprise ATS systems that do that. But I think another point that Marvin Smith, we were lucky to have Marvin Smith from Lockheed Martin, who is someone that has been really a thought leader and thinker on talent communities for a long time that I follow. He made a really good point too on this topic that we're discussing right now, which is that, you know, I made the point of you have to take the time to get to know that your audience and who's in your talent community and segmenting them and provide relevant content. That takes a lot of time and effort. Historically, in those systems at the beginning of doing this, it took a lot of time. You have to go through and manually try to segment your audiences without having that much information. And I think what's going to help this is that the technology is better now. Like the technology is better now that a lot of this segmentation, you can actually get more information now because everyone has a great digital footprint or can sync a LinkedIn profile and give us quick information that gives us a lot more different data points, up to 1,000 different data points on people to automatically segment and automate some of the marketing to those different audiences as well. So I think that's one of the things that's really changed, right? So, you know, Marvin says the big question is how do we find the time to nurture relationships? I think it's a good use of technology, and I know we're gonna talk about this in the next question as well on how, you know, you get that time back through automating some of the things that the machines do and really focusing on what the humans do in this process.
So Will, why are talent communities becoming relevant again? Why now?
Yeah, not to sound like a broken record, it's because the technology has changed. We have all been working on recruiting technology that was fundamentally first built when database technology was what drove everything and optimizing process and compliance. The new ATSs that are coming up nowadays are SaaS, they're cloud, they are they integrate with multiple tools, and they're feature rich. So they, you know, a lot of the new ATSs that are out there have talent communities hooked into talent pools and marketing capabilities inside of them and managing towards more of a candidate centric process rather than just a rec centric process like Christy was talking about earlier. And so they're relevant again because I think most people that look at talent community in the past have this sort of bad taste in their mouth of how much effort was put into those and how much they didn't work, because I think what we knew about how to nurture and build candidate relationships has gotten better. Like we've learned how to do this better. Employer branding, recruitment marketing is more than just a buzzword now. It is a business imperative. And so it's relevant again because now we have the technology to be able to do talent communities really effectively and talk to them where they want to talk. Like Christy was talking about SMS messaging. I mean, most candidates actually prefer to be messaged in those ways and communicate in the way they want to hear. Email is almost never the perfect silver bullet for talent engagement.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that technology, and we can all relate to it because we all use technology in our everyday lives. And the point is to really bring those experiences into the world of talent acquisition and what it feels like to be a candidate. And I think, you know, getting the formula right on how much communication and the moments that matter and how much personalization. You don't actually have to do so much outreach or campaigning and so forth, because there is phenomenal AI that can be built into this. We've been able to get about 95 data points in under 3 minutes, and then and really capture those moments that matter, and actually recruiter to candidate communication. And so the humanization of that can be both at scale when you understand the moments that matter, and someone can get a message that gives them the social anchoring on their phone, on their mobile. But also, there is the ability to go one-to-one through the recruiter as well, and to track all the communications, even through hiring managers and so forth. So I think there's a lot that's being enabled, and what we've been able to find as the result of that is that there are significant benefits in the time to hire. So if you are building a process that cultivates and nurtures through a talent community, you can, we've seen, reduce your time to hire by about 2/3. If the average is about 60 days, you can get it down to 20 days or even less. We have some clients who are hiring in less than an hour for roles that they have on average. If you'll go to the next slide as well, I think it's not only time, but that we see is the real impact of doing this right and doing this in the way the world works today, but also quality. And this is a little bit of a busy slide, but I think the point here on the left-hand side is the blue bars are doing it the new way, and the orange bars are doing it the old way, using social networks or job boards, etc. And you can still have a mix of that, but what you have to understand in that scenario is that you will get much less efficiency out of those job boards and those social networks when it comes to creating a short list. So literally the difference between putting 3 people on a short list because they've come out of a community and a nurtured talent pool, or 15 people on that list. And that's a lot of wear and tear in the organization for you as recruiters, for your teams, for your hiring managers. A lot of frustration as well on the right-hand side when through that process, those people also drop out at a much higher rate. So not only do you need more of them, but then you have to replenish more of them, versus if you've nurtured and cultivated a talent community or talent pool. That is also proven by Gartner, that retention through the candidate process to link to retention for the employees over the long term. So really, really vital annuity value, if you will, around those candidates and their stickiness, their willingness to stay within your business.
It's great. It's really great data. It really, to me, it sounds like, it's taking that strategy, that strategic approach, and thinking through like how you want to do it. Sorry, Michaela, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I'm curious what are the steps to making a talent community successful? We know now why they're relevant, but what actionable steps can we take to make them successful?
Yeah, totally. And I think Christy shared some really great data. And I think you're seeing those types of results because I think what makes a talent community successful, especially as you're getting started, is the fact that your company already has tons of relationships and contact information and candidates sitting in their ATS, just spoiling and doing nothing, sitting in their CRM, sitting in those event forms that they filled out for that recruiting event. So one of the first things you can do is just simply reach out to anyone who's applied to you in the past, your employer brand channels, and invite people to join your talent community, to be considered for future opportunities and to learn more about your organization. I mean, that's step number one. But I think first, beyond that, that's like growing the community. But beyond that, I think it's really thinking through your audience that you want to attract. What type of folks do you want in your talent community? What type of talent, what's your hiring plan over the next couple of years in the future? And think about, as a business, what are our business goals? And then behind that, what are the talent goals we need to hit and the type of people we're going to need to hire over the next couple of years? And let's start building those relationships now. Let's start marketing to these individuals. Let's start telling our story to these individuals. Let's start highlighting our employees that are a good example of the type of more employees we want to hire, and put that out there and start attracting people and start building relationships. And what's great is now technology can help you make this pretty easy, right? But the hard part is developing the relationship. Just like Marvin Smith commented to us earlier, that it's taking that time, how to nurture those relationships. And when you do the work first to build a strategy around the type of people you want to hire and the experience you want them to have and the information you think will be valuable to them, you got to really think through that first, and then start to build your talent community in some pretty great ways. That way, when that hiring demand or that hiring need comes up, boom, you've already got a warm pool of talent that already know you well, have been warm to your brand, have probably seen videos of the hiring manager they'd be working with, and are just excited to get on the phone and talk to your recruiters right away. And that's how you see that data that Christy shared of shortening that time to fill, is because you've already got them there. It's a quick to activate at that point.
Yeah, and we really see that when you've done that, 1 in 4 will actually say yes to applying to a job description, and with the technology that we're using, average median time is 17 minutes to reply to a text. So really, really powerful. And I would have answered the question the same way, Will. I think, as you say, it's about really mapping the organization needs to building the community. So we think of it as, supply and demand. I think the beautiful thing about supply is that if you have the right technology to bring everyone together that both historically, to your point, have probably applied to your organization in the past, send them an invitation, you can get 30 to 50% uptake on that. That's a great power up, but also organically having your the ability to join your community in all the different places where your brand is out in the world. And actually, I think the sands are really shifting about where candidates go. So you just need a strategy that basically says wherever they are, they will come in over time, and we will build our community that way. So on the supply side, you need a really, really strong multi-dimensional omni-channel approach, if you will, and you need to make it very easy for the candidate, but you need to get enough information to be able to be relevant over time. That's the supply side. On the demand side, I do think you have to be really thoughtful. You have to build shells around the talent pools that are clear enough about your future needs, that then you can have really strong AI that sits inside the technology that will help make recommendations, which then make it really, really easy as well to pull people over time. And one of the beautiful things that we've seen as well, when you actually can see a candidate for their multidimensionality, and this is how every human being wants to be seen, right? They don't want to be seen as their last job or that one skill set they have. When you can see candidates in the multidimensionality, when you can track with them over time, because they can update once across their entire profile, for example, if they're with multiple companies, and when the AI is working really well and you've done the supply and demand side, then what we've seen is that candidates may actually come in to a particular pool or a particular role that they were interested in, for example, but 40% of the hires that we see through our platform actually end up being hired in roles that are different to that over time. So again, it's back to this quality over quantity. Are we doing enough with the multidimensionality or the capabilities that the candidates have? Are we doing enough to engage them over time so that they really are at the moment in time ready, interested, willing, and we've got a high quality track record on that. I think that gets a very, very different outcome, but it is this supply-demand equation with, I think, some really strong AI and some really strong engagement techniques in the middle of it, and then it's magic.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it's really taking a community approach to hiring. It's owning your own audience. It's like, I don't have to go pay $500 a job posting on some job marketplace because I've built my own marketplace of talent. Now, you're not going to do it overnight, but starting to do that, leveraging technology, having it integrated into the ATS and hiring process you already have, and thinking proactively about your hiring and doing that. And I think that is just the best way to do it, because that is when you really are focusing on quality, because you're building sort of this just community of qualified, interested individuals that are open to learning about you as an organization, and you're organizing and you're collecting those folks, and you have information that can help you personalize your messaging to them. But behind all this, and the thing I don't think we've talked a lot about yet, as far as making it successful, is the need for good content. And the great thing is that we all have these amazing content making machines sitting in our pockets, every one of us. your employees, it doesn't have to be super overly produced content. It could be just the natural stories that happen internally at your company overall, and just learning how to flex the muscle and say, hey, this might be relevant to our sales talent pool. Why don't we tell them about that President's Club Hawaii trip we took, and give a little update and who won, and just start sharing our story with these folks in a relevant, value adding way. Like, how do we create content and not be a YARP, right? Like, not be yet another recruiting post, but I think nowadays content, you either have to be teaching them something or entertaining the heck out of them. If it's not either one of those, or have an opportunity that's really relevant to their skill set right now, and where they want to go next. If you don't have one of those things, it is just more spam. It is just something.
Then don't, because less is actually more. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Christy, tell me, what's the opportunity for HR and talent acquisition within your organization when it comes to building these talent communities?
Well, I think for the function, I think is maybe what we're asking here in terms of, what we see for the HR function, for the TA function. I think it's a phenomenal time for HR and talent acquisition and organizations that have to reinvent themselves, that have to really center on talent as their future differentiator and their success, quite frankly. So how much is HRTA positioning itself at the pointy end of the stick on that? And the bias that I always take, and this is having grown up in a research organization, CEB, recently bought by Gartner, is really to make sure that you're always taking an empirical approach, that you're speaking the language of the business, that you have the numbers, and that you can make decisions, and that you really demand that not only of your team and the way that you're engaging with the business, but of your vendors, and that you are looking for quantifiable outcomes. You're looking for strong analytics that you can use to make decisions. And this is so powerful for being able to be agile, to be able to meet the business needs, and to be able to move fast. So that's what I think is the opportunity today.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. I think the opportunity here is the ability, kind of what I said before, of having more control and limiting your cost. You can build a fan base for your culture, a fan base for your company. This has true ROI for the business overall. I think this is, if you're talking about HR and talent acquisition having a seat at the table, what better way to do that than to say that we're building an army of advocates and fans of our brand that not only want to work here, but are going to be loud advocates for opportunities, and maybe share it with their friends, whether they work here or not, because we are developing a relationship with and really actually want to know who they are and their career goals, and be able to reach out to them when an opportunity comes up. So I think the opportunity for HR and TA is to truly start to push the business towards being more future thinking and thinking about the talent they need for tomorrow, and start getting a lot more proactive on how they hire and thinking about what the talent that we need to start building relationships with now for the jobs we're going to have in the future and today. And it's a different way of thinking. And I think this is starting with the talent community and building a good talent engagement process through your CRM or your talent pool technology is a great way to start moving away from a reactive post and pray strategy and getting into more of a strategy that is focused on being more human. And I think that this slide is a great representation of that. Is like, right now, our current technology stacks and our hiring processes are really built for a world that doesn't exist anymore. It was very useful in the .com era when we had, monster.com and job boards were becoming a new thing, because all of a sudden now we can go to one place and get tons of applicants. It was really focused on quantity and not quality. Nowadays, we can get a lot more targeted in our employer branding and recruitment marketing, a lot more personalized in our messaging, and not need an entire large recruitment marketing agency to power it for you. You really can do it yourself.
Christy, we have a question from the chat that I'd like you to address.
Okay.
Other than HR recruiting, who from your organization do you think should participate in the community conversations?
I hope I'm hearing it right in the way that it's intended, but I think when we say from your organization, from a company that that has instituted a talent community, for example, I think that absolutely the hiring managers are vital for being able to engage candidates, and you actually need technology to enable that as well, because you actually need to have a record of all the communications going to a particular candidate in the order and from whom, so that anyone who picks up that conversation can see what's happened before. And that interplay, when you do it right, feels incredibly honoring for a candidate to have known that they are being attended to by multiple people who have their eye on them as a human being and as a single ongoing conversation, if you will. So I think that's quite vital. I think if the question is also, where is the impact that HRTA can have on other parts of the organization, I think absolutely marketing, because again, touching all of these candidates, creating a phenomenal experience. I think the CFO is very interested in our ability to move away from big, expensive approaches to casting wide nets for candidates that don't deliver a high return. I think procurement's quite interested as well, because there's a whole contractor element that can be linked into a community here and managed just as easily that way. So I think the power is that the communities will have more followers than a marketing team's entire social media put together. So that reach and that impact is huge.
Anything you want to add, Will? Who else in the organization might be interested in the success of the talent communities?
No, I agree. I think hiring is a team sport. The entire company recruiting is there to facilitate it. Marketing is there to help with the messaging of it, but everyone, especially hiring managers, of course, and especially the marketing department. The marketing department spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to accumulate people in a database and have information to know and have them express interest in learning more about the company. I think what I really love is seeing how the consumer brand, especially with these consumer-driven companies who are consumer-facing, I think like financial institutions, consumer products, retail, right? These companies have a pretty great opportunity to partner with marketing and HR to tell the people behind the product stories through this talent community. You can actually sell product as well as the company through this in a way that's not too salesy, but through true employee stories and experience sharing. So I think there's a lot of people who can, who can benefit and be wanting to produce content and communicate through a talent community platform, especially if it's two-way and candidates can ask questions. Imagine having a communication going out to candidates saying, hey, we are going to do a live Q&A with our CEO. What questions would you like to ask them? And then getting those questions and then sending everyone out a link to join the live Q&A, right? Like this is the stuff that you can now do pretty frictionless.
So now we are on our Q&A part of the webinar. So if you have questions, feel free to pop them into the question box. I have a few that I'd like to ask. How do I convince my candidates to join my talent community? Who'd like to take that question?
I'm happy to take the first run at that one. I think that, we talked a little bit earlier about when you're building your community, you have a lot of trapped data in your ATS. Often candidates who have applied in the past, they were interested in you. They were interested in your brand. There was something that brought them there. That's a wonderful place to start because they're they're warm in effect or were at one point. And so again, we see about a 30 to 50% return on sending an invitation to them and a heartfelt, you were interested at one time, we're building a community, we'd love to invite you. It's an invitation, and it's a low risk way for people to express interest, to learn more. We actually as well have some awesome stats on the number of women who will pursue an opportunity to join a community, which isn't the same as applying for a job. And so we punch above our weight in Australia in particular, and in the US as well, on the average number of women in the workforce who then are overrepresented in the community, but then even more overrepresented in the hiring. So there's something that really speaks to that as well. So it's a low risk way, make it easy, make it heartfelt, and then be everywhere your brand is for people to organically come in, raise their hand, opt into to building, to joining the community.
Yeah, I agree. I think the easy sell of a talent community is saying that, you are going to be you really think about like what's in it for them, right? Like what's in it? Like, why would I want it to join a talent community? Well, probably because I want to learn more about the organization. I'm not really ready to apply. I'm passively interested in learning more. And I think that's an easier sell than saying apply to this job right now. Whether you're qualified or not, go ahead and apply. I think what's powerful about the ability of talent community is that it's pretty low barrier to entry. It's typically pretty easy to do, and it allows them to learn more.
So the next question I have from the audience is, let's see which one. How often should I be engaging with my talent community?
Yeah, that's an easy one. Whenever you have something of value to share. I think I talked about that a little bit earlier in the webinar that when I first started doing talent communities, and I did them all wrong, it was pretty much just gathering a list of email database and automated the flow of weekly job alerts. Frankly, that's just not very, very value adding. I think, you really should communicate to them when you have something relevant to them or a value to share. So if they're a salesperson who joined your talent community in your sales talent pool, or they're an engineer, right? Maybe your company got a new patent or launched a new product, and you've got a great blog from the team that built that product and why they got such a sense of fulfillment out of the impact that they made and what they learned doing that. I mean, that's something an engineer would want to learn about and would pique their interest. It's really that what Christy alluded to earlier around those moments that matter as well, right? Like knowing the right time to reach out to them when maybe something on their side or on our side, right? They'll let us know. If they go in and they update information in their talent community profile, that's a pretty good indicator that they probably want you to reach out, or they're ready to hear more about some opportunities. So it's really those moments that matter. And when you actually have something to say, there's no cadence that you absolutely have to follow.
Just a follow-up question. How do we know what kind of valuable content to send to who? Like, how do we properly segment that content?
Sorry?
How does an organization go about properly segmenting content so that we're reaching the right content to the right person?
Yeah, I think segmenting content it starts with first building out who are your talent audiences and what's your hiring plan, right? Like, you know what you need to hire. Hopefully, I know hiring plans constantly change, right? But you at least know what roles you're hiring for that year. And here's the other thing is business is moving so quickly that the jobs that are going to be in existence 3 to 5 years from now, they don't even exist right now, right? And so it's really about just cultivating people. The hard part, I think, is getting people to be aware and warm and know your company, right? The biggest complaint that I see talking to lots of recruiters when they're trying to fill a role is that, oh, they don't know about us in that market. They don't know who we are. They definitely have the skill sets and they would love this job, but I can't get them on the phone because they don't know who we are, right? Building a talent community allows you to build that warm pool of people who already know who you are. And then it's just, it's understanding who is in your talent pool, segmenting them appropriately, and building content that makes sense for those talent personas that you're trying to attract and engage into roles.
Thank you, Will. We have a question from the chat that I'd like you to consider. So VMware has a number of communities of practice. Were there any learnings from the profession-based communities that are relevant to talent communities?
Yes, that was a really big part of our strategy, right? VMware is already building these amazing technical communities of people in the virtualization and cloud infrastructure business. And what was great and what we did there is we made ourselves relevant as we were building the talent community side. And they would have me as a guest on those monthly meetings or do a guest post in those technical communities to talk about sort of the people side of that. And it was kind of funny, people were starting to tweet when I was first building this, the VMware careers, and people were tweeting out like, why is VMware careers following me? What is this? And people from the community who heard me talk before and said, oh no, that's Will and them over there. They're just really sharing some great stuff about what it's like working at VMware. You should totally follow them. They share good stuff, right? And then that grew our talent communities as well. And it gave us sort of like this, this clout within that community that we weren't just recruiters slinging jobs, that we really just were wanting to connect into the community and build a relationship with people who love using the software, who might actually love working on and building the software, right? And it was a wonderful connection between the community content marketing approach that our corporate marketing team was doing and the community marketing approach that I was doing with my team within the talent acquisition and global sourcing organization. And it really works. And I think there's so many opportunities where you can find collaboration with corporate marketing in the professional communities that your company may be a part of, and the career communities and that you're trying to do to attract great talent into your organization. And what better people to hire than your own happy, fanatical current clients and customers.
So another question we have is, since resumes often aren't accurate and people grow and change, should candidates in my community be removed after a while? If so, how long? How long should I keep them in the pool?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think, our view is that that there's always a moment when someone is interested and they're changing, and so we have what we call a federated profile, and if in that scenario there's one piece of information that has changed, a cyber certification, whatever it is, they can go in and that will broadcast across all of the communities that they're in. And that really starts to, to change the dynamic for that particular candidate. I don't think there's any reason, and maybe what's behind the question is, oh, does it feel laborious for me to have to be engaging so many people? Should I try to cull my community a bit? And I actually think that that what we're talking about is operating at scale here on a lot of this. So if you've put something out on social, for example, just think, what talent pool might be interested in that, and you send a link through a text, and you just never know what comes out of that. And we have a lot of algorithms that actually show engagement, not only skill matching to pop people up to the top of the list. And so the technology should do a lot of that for you. You shouldn't feel like you've got a massive burden on this engagement level. And so you can have a lot of one-to-many. Again, we recommend not too much, to be quite frank, and to know the moments that matter, and have the technology also understand the moments that matter. And then where appropriate, you can have the one-to-one. But there's really no reason, in our view, for pulling people out of a community.
Yeah, especially since they own that their information and can remove their information from whatever company's talent community they've joined, which is a really cool feature of LiveHire that we really enjoy. And I think another sort of tip around this too is is think about these types of considerations in your content strategy, right? So sometimes you have to market the very features of your own talent community, or remind people within your talent community. So you know you're going to be doing some big hiring for marketing in Q2. Cool. Maybe in Q1, reaching out to that talent pool of marketing professionals or people interested in marketing and saying, hey, don't forget to update your talent community in a while, because you can see typically, like, when was the last time somebody signed in and updated their resume information or information, right? Just every once in a while, reaching out to people saying, hey, this is, you should update your profile, because, the better information we have about you, the better we can match you to opportunities and know more about you to add more value to you. So sometimes you got to sell why to do it. And so if you're constantly reaching out to the community and getting that content fresh and updated, then it's just setting up a recipe where if email addresses are broken and don't work anymore, that you automatically purge those, right? And it's saying, people that haven't updated their information in a while, maybe we automatically send an email asking them to update it or resync their LinkedIn profile or whatever. So there's ways to sort of automate the management of that as well at scale, or build a content strategy to where you kind of have the community do the work for you, either leave the community or update their information as they go.
So I just want to leave with any final thoughts. Christy, Will, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, my only final thought would be it's an incredible time to be in business, to be in HR, to be in talent acquisition, to be able to take experiences that we all have as consumers and bring that into our businesses and bring that into the way that we do business. And I would just say, don't be afraid. You know what it feels like, because we all experience it, every day. And you know what it feels like, so you know what we're trying to create, and it's incredibly possible now. So you got to go for it. You got to make a change to feel the difference.
Yeah.
Well,
really final thought on me is words matter. If so you don't get hung up on the terminology of all this, talent community, talent network, CRM, ATS. Like, at the end of the day, we're talking about a people platform and a relationship or candidate engagement process and technology and strategy here is really what we're talking about. Whatever tools you can do to will work for this. I think if you get too hung up on talent community as a terminology, you're gonna think and imply how we sort of talked about talent communities the next 10 years. I think when you really just think about it, that companies are communities, right? They at the end of the day, every company is just a coalition of people coming together over one mission and value, right? And set of values, right? And so talent attraction is really around sharing that shared vision and finding other people, like just putting your vibe to attract your tribe, right? Put your vibe out there and share the best of your people and what you're doing. And if you're really focused on that and really adding value and not just taking the easy way out of spamming, you're going to be very successful with building a talent community that becomes fruitful and has an amazing ROI.
Thank you so much for your time today, Christy and Will. We have a contact slide here in case you're interested in reaching out to either of them. And we'll be sending a recording of this shortly after the webinar, so you guys can have a copy of this, as well as a link to download the report that Christy had mentioned and some more information about Proactive Talent in case you're interested in learning more about what we do. And so I just want to thank you again, and have an enjoyable Halloween, or however you celebrate the holiday. So thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, Michaela.
Thank you. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Michaela. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Chrissy. Bye.